Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Obscure Arc. I'm here with my co host, Emre, and we're here to talk about what I was put on this earth to talk about, which is sports anime.
Let's go. Yes. We finally have our non-running sports anime.
Mm-hmm.
Third time is the charm. It's a show called AoAshi. And yeah, I was kind of excited bringing in this show recommendation to the show, it being, again, not a running anime, but also being a prospective successful anime. Has quite the potential in my eyes, and also a fun watch.
I think for me, the big thing about this month specifically is we're talking a lot about genres pretty heavily. We talked about, last episode talked pretty heavily about genre with Horimiya. This episode, we're talking pretty heavily about genre with sports anime and AoAshi. And we're inevitably going to compare this to Haikyuu. I know people might dread that, but ultimately Haikyuu is a pretty important anime to both of us, and we'll get into more detail about why that is and all that stuff related to production IG. But it's going to be a lot about not just AoAshi, but about sports anime as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. And Haikyuu itself is, yes, it's important to us, but it's also pretty substantial to
It's really important to sports
genre at this point where we've arrived. So that being said, let's break down the production details real quick. This is going to be an interesting one, as in season 1 of this anime was done by Production IG. It was a spring-summer 2023 anime, which they've done other animes, which one of them we just mentioned, Haikyuu. They also did Psycho-Pass, Croco's Basket, Fooly Cooly, Run with the Wind, Kimi no Todoke, and Kaiju no 8. On top of it, like I just mentioned, season 2 is not being done by Production IG, but it's being done by TMS. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it should be sometime fall 2026. I believe, I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be another 24 episode season. I've seen some of the trailers and stuff like that, but things look mostly the same. We'll talk a bit more why I am hypothesizing why it's being done by TMS, but TMS is a big enough studio to make this work.
It is. They're pretty big. They obviously can pull it off, and from what we've seen watching the trailer, the art looks pretty similar. The style looks pretty similar. So we'll see. But so far, looks nice. The production side of things, they're done by Shogakukan Seisha Productions, Marvelous Entertainment, NHK Enterprises, Bandai Spirits, so pretty well-known names over there. It is licensed by Crunchyroll, so not a shocker, I guess. It's based on a manga that was initially released back in 2015 and actually continued till 2025, so it had 40 volumes, which is a substantial amount of volumes to have.
Yeah, most barely get 5.
Exactly. So that being said, in that regard, it's a good success. And for reference, Haikyuu had 45, which, again, we're going to be using that as a reference point a lot.
Off the top of my head, something like My Hero had like 42. So this is like a really long going run. And when it's not a shonen, I mean, I know AoAshi's like on the line of shonen in sports, but when it's not like a shonen, it's rare for them to get this many volumes, just primarily just because a lot of the times they'll get told to wrap it up sooner than later.
Yeah. So the lead and main illustrator of this manga was Yugo Kobayashi and Naohiko Ueno.
Yeah, Naohiko Ueno, I believe, did mostly just writing on the side and stuff of the sort.
But anyone who knows a mangaka's life story, sticking to a story you're doing for like a decade is pretty burdensome and impressive.
Yeah, for sure.
That being said, going on to music side of things, it's done by Masaru Yokoyama, which we just mentioned on the previous episode because he also did Horimiya. And no, we did not pick these shows intentionally by that parameter, but it's just what happened. Just to go through some stuff he did again. He did Your Lie in April, Fruits Basket, Mashal, Classroom of the Elite, Fate Apocrypha, and Horimiya. Sound director, Shoji Hata. This guy is a big hitter, y'all. He did a fan favorite, Death Note, One Punch Man, Spy X Family, Fairy Tail, Vinland Saga, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas, Freyren, Apothecary Diaries, and on notes taken by Jared, it says just go to this guy's My Anime list. All right?
He's got an extensive. It's insane. Like I really could have included like 10 more easily that are well-known ones.
So he's one of the main sound director guys you find out there in the anime realm.
Hey, editor Jared here. We made a bit of an oopsie with the director for AoAshi. The director is Akira Sato, who has done primarily key animation as well as animation directing for Dead Man Wonderland, Ergo Proxy, and Fate's Grand Order. First Order, they don't really have any notable directorial positions.
Where to watch, since it's licensed by Crunchyroll, you can watch it from Crunchyroll or any other sources you might have. So, talking about this show, obviously we both kind of watched a ton of sports anime. Me specifically watched anything regardless of the quality.
Yeah, you've watched a lot more than me.
I'm a sucker for sports anime genre. I really do enjoy almost any type of sports anime out there, regardless of the quality.
Unfortunately
For some, not for me. I actually do dig him a lot. And AoAshi is I'd say a good example of the genre for what it is. I really enjoy it. It has some real good notes it has taken, or at least that's our assumption from Haikyuu. Certainly in some aspects. In some aspects, it does feel much more shonen-y.
Yeah, for sure.
And you do end up seeing kind of shonen tropes throughout the show, but nonetheless, it's a fun to watch, interesting, heavily soccer related, and relatively passionate about the sport itself, sports anime. It's, I'd say, in a set place in like a youth, high energy, high stakes, kind of really, what would you call it, like intense in moments environment?
Listen, this is very shonen-y for a sports anime.
Yeah.
Like even when you compare it to like, I would even comparison to Kuroko. This is shonen in like this is like the most shonen of sports anime I've seen in like a while.
Yeah.
It really cares about its lead a ton. Yeah, I mean it's
yeah,
typical Japan, typical modern day, really focused more so less on setting and more focused on genre type of thing.
Yeah. So, but because of that shonen-y aspect to it, it's always like high energy.
Yeah.
A lot of loudness, a lot of high movement kind of environment.
We'll get to that in a
going
sec.
around. Yeah. I generally like the looks of the show. They're pretty true to the source. I used to read the manga back in the days. I did not finish it, to be honest.
It's a long manga. So.
It is a long manga. But back when I was reading, I was up to date for a decent amount of time. It's pretty nice in terms of accuracy to the source. That being said, obviously I do enjoy watching this show, and I think it's a pretty decent sports anime representatives out there other than shows like Haikyuu or Hajime no Ippo. So what's kind of your brief take on it?
For those who don't know me personally, I quite literally did a video about why Queen's Gambit should have been a sports anime, and I say that kind of as like a slight clickbaity thumbnail. The main premise of the video is I think Queen's Gambit, it's trying to do certain things emulating of sports animation, but also in a very... I ignore talking about this in the video, but if I was to do it nowadays, I'd talk about it in more of like a very white tone, as well as also in a much more cinematic way. And I have my gripes with it, and you can watch the 84-minute video if you really care. But in that essay, I talk about why it could have done things a little bit better, primarily related to shows like Haikyuu, which I think it could have engaged with the sports more. Chihaya, which is I think a lot better in moments, and also March Comes Like a Lion, which I know is a stretch on the sports anime, but also it's more similar to Queen's Gambit than those other shows because it's very character focused. I love sports anime as a whole. Like I've seen, I've mentioned, Chihaya, March Comes Like a Lion, Haikyuu, but I've also seen things like Ping Pong, Yuri on Ice. I've also seen, one of my founding animes was Prince of Tennis. We've seen Run with the Wind. I really do enjoy the genre, and I think it has a lot of, it is like many genres very interested in its tropes, but also I think when done well, able to encapsulate something that live action can't, which is really feeling a kinesis and flow state that you can't capture without being able to like slow down time in a natural way. Whereas there's people who have seen Challengers, and there are people who like Challengers, and there's people like me who I think are very whatever on Challengers. And just primarily because I think it's just not fit for the medium per se. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, like we always talk about, we started the podcast because of Orb. We started the podcast because of Orb. Reality is we spent like their first like work shift talking about Haikyuu for like 4 hours. So Haikyuu is very important to both of us. It's like Haikyuu is like in my top 5 favorite anime. I fucking love this show. I'm actually rewatching it with my roommate right now. And when you compare Haikyuu to like any other sports anime besides like a few, it's always going to be like a big gap. I think I like AoAshi. I enjoy it. But I do think there's a lot of times where I see this is definitely successful because it's targeted as a shonen sports anime, not just like a good story and like a good, like overall, like well-rounded thing. Like, whereas I think the reason why Haikyuu is so good is it's so engaged with volleyball, and it's so engaged with the feelings and ideas related to it, and it's so passionate. Whereas I feel like AoAshi is more just like I'm passionate, but I don't know really about what. Yeah. Partially just because of how shonen-y it is. But I really do love sports anime as a medium. And I think AoAshi is like indicative of the good and bad like parts of the genre. Because honestly, it's like there are stupid things about sports anime when you look at it from like a, I guess, more quote unquote grounded perspective. I think it's a little unrealistic, a little ridiculous. Like one of the things I know that a lot of my friends comment on when they watch like Haikyuu for the first time is they'll be like, "Oh, why is their face going through the net?" And I'm just like, because I can assure you the alternative looks much worse. And I know it's not realistic, and I know it looks weird, and occasionally they'll do certain decisions like that, but it's just like, you have to do certain things to contribute certain ideas or have visual clarity and all this kind of jazz to make it work. I think people don't understand how important getting kinesis and flow state is in the genre, and you often have to sacrifice a certain amount of realism for that. And I think some people who are obsessed over realism can kick rocks, because ultimately that's not why we make art. Like, as nice as realism is, it's not less about realism, people. It's more about authenticity, right? That's the more important part of the
that's
equation.
what I was gonna say. Like, it's you can go for realism, obviously, and there's a good space to use it. But if it's getting in the way of your storytelling, then there's no reason doing it. Mm-hmm. And that's why, like in the example you just gave, they don't do it, because it would get in the way of storytelling and not necessarily add to it.
For me, the biggest thing about that separates, just so I can just nip this in the bud as soon as I can, the thing that separates Haikyuu from AoAshi the most as an animation is the animation quality. It is pretty obvious that, in my opinion, this is all presumption, I don't know if Production IG has said anything about this outwardly, that Production IG could not do Haikyuu again if they wanted to. They could not. This is a show that took too long for them, as you see why they're doing movies to end Haikyuu, as well as also just like how long the seasons took after a certain point. Like Haikyuu released in like 2016, and season 4 didn't finish until like 2021 or 2 or something like that. And that's like not insanely slow, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure it's just like production IG probably had to use a lot more resources than they would have liked, and it looks phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but you can tell with this show it's meant to be churned out a little bit faster, even though it's still taking them a while. Like how long it's like taking them, it's just made a lot more quote unquote efficiently, as in a lot more moving still panels, a lot more focus on just action lines. There's even some reused Haikyuu assets, which I feel weird about. Like there's some weird like noise, primarily sound, that it feels out of place to me, because I'm just like, oh, I know that from Haikyuu. And it's just overall as a production, it's really just not as good. Like I think the art is fine and I like it for what it is, but ultimately like I like the art in Haikyuu more. But the animation is just like, it's like a Haikyuu has good animation even in the small moments, but even in the big moments of AoAshi, the animation is not shoddy at best, but it's struggling. It's not there.
Yeah, I'd say the only like moments that art kind of gets more intriguing for me is, I think we only have it twice anyway, but like when the coins drop on the players, and sometimes, not every time, sometimes when we get the bird's eye view. And not all of those even, like which kind of shows it's obviously not as good as Haikyuu, and probably production IG did kind of look to this show to a certain degree as a quicker flip than Haikyuu, and they just kind of scooped over and reused what they can from Haikyuu.
I'm sure part of it is that they didn't even want to do season 2 because they were just like, they don't want to do sports anime anymore because of how intense. Like, guys, Haikyuu animates fucking everything. Like, if you watch this, like, that's the thing, is I watched Haikyuu as like not one of my first sports anime, but like as one of my. There's a period of time where I wasn't watching anime. It was one of my first anime that I came back to. And like you take for granted how much Haikyuu fucking animates. Haikyuu animates the hair, the fingers, everything in a scene, and that's just intensive work. Like that's just a lot of time that you just can't always get. Like and it's just something like when people criticize season 4's art style being more simplified and stronger lines, I'm like, because we want to see the show come out in our fucking lifetime. Like I understand why they did, and also I think the art style looks fine, and I think the animations, I think there's weaknesses in the moments, but I would say if they needed to do, I think it was an okay compromise in comparison to doing, let's say, movies. I think the movies were not okay compromise.
Yeah, the movies were not, like I was okay, like I didn't necessarily like the lines getting like softer in characters' faces and stuff for the new season, but it's still like whatever in most cases. Them fully transitioning into movies to wrap it up, it
actually damages the storytelling at that point, because I think most of the stuff is communicated perfectly fine with a slightly different art style, but I think ultimately the movies like kill it. And just like when you see, like, I would argue the weaker animation is partially why I watch sports anime. You really see how weak the animation is in this show, not because the animation looks bad, but because of the active choices to avoid scenes that require high animation. You consistently see
lack of it being there.
Yeah, you consistently see the moving panel, the passing scene, the same dribbling. Like you see a lot of it over and over again. Anything to hide motion. Now, to be fair, do I prefer this over Blue Lock season 2? Yes, I prefer this over Blue Lock season 2 because it actually looks like animation. But like, it's really hard to sell me on this when it comes to the actual like animation style, because it's just like I can pass up a slice of life and a romance, or like, I mean, I can watch a slice of life and romance and like be perfectly fine if the animation's a little shoddy here and there. Like I can get by as long as the art's good, the voice acting's good, good story overall. As sports anime, I come for the animation, right? Like I need the animation to be there.
Yeah, which unfortunately nowadays it's one of the biggest lacking parts in a lot of sports anime, which disturbs.
Well, there's plenty of good ones, but for example, like one of my beloved Chihaya Furu. Chihaya Furu was made by Madhouse. Chihaya Furu is no longer being made, and I doubt there's ever going to be a season 4 because this is 25 episode seasons of an insanely long manga. for a relatively popular manga, but insanely long manga and only popular primarily among women, because it's fucking insane how much they animate. It's insane how much they animate in that show, and I'm just like, yeah. And it's got a lot of intense artistry and ideas, and I'm just like, yeah. Even just like beyond just the baseline of getting good animation in there, trying to then include artistry, which is why Haikyuu is good, why Haikyuu is good, is because they introduce artistry and style and all of these things. It becomes like impossible, right? It becomes like something that is very difficult to tackle.
That's why they're also like very specific examples of what we get to say, or like that we can just pull out and name drop them. It should be more in general. That would be to the current sports anime genre, that would be the general like comment I'd make, that we need intricate, detailed animations back. We need them more.
Well, I mean, it's just a choice of you shouldn't be making a sports anime unless that's the intention to do so. I mean, Blue Lock is the example of it.
Unfortunately.
What's funny, because we used to have sports anime slop more so. Like, I think Free is the perfect example of sports anime slop, where Free looks good. For as much as I shit on Free looks good.
Yeah, like, the animation is pretty good.
Yeah, like I enjoy how Free looks. Like, Kuroko no Basket, I could argue, is like, which actually has worse animation than Free. Don't get me wrong, but has like
like even that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's still pretty good, but like it's something that has become. I don't know. I think they've thought it's okay to get by, but I really think that it's not okay for it to be doing this.
No, for movement being your main points, being sports anime, it's not okay. But that being said, it's let's kind of get into a bit more details.
Talk about how AoAshi itself,
how like the characters, the anime itself is, and not so much of the production side of things.
I will say Aoi is your really standard shonen character, like super standard shonen character of loud, genius, has a big dream. Or he doesn't actually have a big dream until it's kind of like pushed on him that he wants, to support his mom, but eventually develops to having a big dream, and wants to be the best and yada, yada, yada. I fucking hate that type of character. I do enjoy, there is enough nuance in Aoi, and I think how he interacts that works. But if you would ask me, like, even like people are like, oh, do you like Hinata? I'm like, yeah, but Hinata's not as obnoxious. I think he's just kind of like Aoi. The difference between Hinata and and I know you wanted me to stop comparing, but Hinata is loud when he talks, but he's not always talking. Aoi's like fucking always talking, and he's always loud. That's how it feels. Like, I know Aoi focuses when he's like, playing in games and he's not as loud, but it's like, I feel like it takes up so much goddamn space. It's annoying. And part of it is because of how much the other characters don't do anything as much as I would like. But I also think that I really enjoy the first 3-ish episodes when Aoi's like considering going to Esperion Youth, because I think ultimately that depiction of like sacrifice and going pro and the losing your family type of thing, and how like I think people don't realize that when a like student athlete or like young athlete like kind of has to come about, is like oftentimes it's like the parent who's sacrificing a ton of things. Sometimes they're forcing their kid to do it, or sometimes there's other things, I think, of like, whether it's because they're pushing them to do it or whether it's because they are chasing their dream and they have to sacrifice all this time. Like, it's a really hard thing for a family to experience with the hope of payoff of like, the big contract. Once I signed my first big contract, it's talked about all the time. I really enjoy that whole dynamic with his mom not letting him really get the satisfaction of, I'm doing it for you, but at the same time knowing that they still care.
It's like the quote where she's like, soccer's taking you like further away.
Oh yeah, that was really me. It's like the first time as a mom she says something selfish, and it sticks with Aoi whether she likes it or not.
And like, I'd say in that regard, it's actually a pretty quick hook on the show. Even though it's kind of relatively a false hook.
No, it's not shown much later.
Yeah, but still, for going into the show and kind of getting that feeling for it. And if anything, kind of getting that feeling for Aoi specifically, it's a quick turnaround. And later on, it does become much more shonen-y, where it's like you do see the focus of soccer here and there, but like a shonen show would do, in a lot of moments, it's very much Aoi driven.
I think the easiest way to tell whether something is shonen or at least
Close to
shonen
it, yeah.
coded is the focus of the show a young male, often young man, not always, but primarily young male character overcoming an obstacle consistently? And is it about overcoming obstacle, overcoming obstacle, overcoming obstacle? That's oftentimes the case. Whether it's an enemy, whether it's a something they're learning, and all that shit, like, is even. That's why I always tell people, like, Chainsaw Man is more or less a seinen but coded shonen, because it is about Denji overcoming things.
And the thing is,
not.
like, don't get us wrong, as in, like, almost every sports anime out there is like, they have these shonen elements, but it's how much it's driven by that element alone. So
yeah,
in AoAshi season 1, it takes a really important position of being the main driving point, where he just falls and tries to comes over, like, tries to go over this obstacle, falls again, gets
no, to be fair, in reality, they treat him like God's gift to soccer more often than not, where he, like, falls and then immediately solves a problem. I feel like that happens a lot in the show, where he's like, he quickly learns how, like, I think the biggest thing that is, like, jarring to me as a dynamic is the show pretty quickly paints him, once he gets into Inspirion Youth FC, they quickly show that he's actually a pretty bad player, like, pretty early on, but then also apparently has an incredible influence on the game, which I can get how that works and all that stuff. Like, he's a player who doesn't have good fundamentals, but also understands soccer instinctually from a macro standpoint very well. But at the same time, like, they, like, really pounded your head, like, he's fucking, like, his on the ball movement's bad. And I'm just like, okay, how is he that successful then? Like, just stuff like that, where I'm just like, and then he immediately solves stuff. It happens pretty consistently, where I'm just kind of like, wow, he is moving quickly. Whereas in comparison to other sports anime, like, usually it takes a bit more time, a bit more training.
Yeah, weirdly enough. So I'd say the thing is, in a lot of sports anime, right, we usually end up seeing, which is not the case for this one, is the lack of physicality, or being able to execute something physically. Whereas in AoAshi, he doesn't necessarily lack physicality in terms of, I'm not talking about technique. He certainly does lack technique, but I'm talking about, like, more like basic to every sport kind of stuff, like stamina and, like, agility, being able to do distance and all that stuff. So he doesn't necessarily go all the way to those foundations, and he lacks more theory, which is still kind of feels a bit too fast paced from time to time. I definitely agree on that part, but also kind of justifies why he's able to, once he grasps it, because he is already physically capable of executing stuff, like, he takes that jump much faster in comparison to a character where if they lacked the physicality, they wouldn't be able to do so, even if they understood it.
Well, for me, the thing that doesn't stick with that is, like, it's not like, again, it's not like you see the dots connect all the time very well. Like, I think the biggest thing for me with AoAshi that doesn't really work per se is, first of all, Spirion Youth is a they are a proper football club, like in a J1 league. Apparently their youth B team fucking sucks. Like, apparently they, like, I understand that, like, it's a new team coming together. But apparently they fucking suck. And, like, there's a moment where they go 0-4, but, like, you had no idea they were going 0-4 because it's not shown at all. But Aoi being, like, the truth and the reason that this team can be fixed, I think is always my big issue when I'm like, isn't the goal that these players are supposed to be talented, at least to some extent, and that they are, like, they show Esperion youth, like, or, like, the youth at the lower level before they joined the actual youth, to be like insanely talented and beating the crap out of everyone else. And I'm just like, really? There's like, if these players are that good, you're telling me there's like, they're going 0-4 and then you're not showing, like, there's such a disconnect between struggle, learning, and then goals. It goes from struggle to goals. The learning is very secondary, which is part of the reason I enjoy the journey. Like, there's like a lot of the times it is, you're told, like, he's more or less given the answer a lot of the times, and then he just achieves it, which I don't like, because I think a lot of the times when you are learning, you are going to make a few more mistakes than he actually does, which, like, one of the things is, like, when he first learns, like, the kill it and then send it thing, whatever. Yeah. Like, it kind of is like he does it in practice, then in the game, it's like, perfect, we did it. And it's just like, okay, I don't know. It just feels all wrong where I'm just like, I know he practices and does it, but learning is more than just showing me that he's practicing, right? It's kind of like about having a more holistic approach to a character, right? Learning is a moment for you to show me something about the character, whereas Aoi, I'm kind of consistently hitting a wall of like, okay, apparently he just got it. Apparently he just got it. Whereas, like,
So, like, for that kind of moment in a show, like, what would your approach be to actually, like, show a character,
so to use
learning it and not just
to show, like, something? I think to choose from something slightly nicher, I'll choose, like, Chihaya Furu with Chihaya. One of the things with, like, the Chihaya learns is, like, Chihaya is like, in, like, the game of cards, so you have to move your hand really quickly in that. She's like, oh, I'm all physicality, I'm gonna go fast, I'm gonna knock every card. What she doesn't understand a lot of the times is, like, and, like, she becomes very good very quickly, but she's like, what she doesn't understand, like, a macro level is, like, understanding, like, kind of how you place cards and strategy wise, and kind of, like, she literally, like, is such a dumbass that she doesn't understand, like, oh, people have been, like, planning things around me this entire time. And she kind of reflects on other games that she's played, is like, wait, oh, that's why I didn't do that in that game. And then kind of is like, quickly, she becomes infinitely worse. Because, like, literally, like, she's told at one point, stop using your speed. Your speed is actively holding you back as a player. She's like, wait, what? And she becomes worse, like, quite a bit worse as a player. And then, she slowly goes to get better and better. And there's a point where she injures her hand and has to use her other hand, and it changes her whole dynamic. Whereas with Aoi, like, it kind of reflects when you see a character in a moment of struggle of like, hey, what does this game mean to me? What can I actually learn from it? What am I relying on? Like, it forces a character to do that. Whereas with Aoi, I feel like it's bouncing off of him a lot. A lot of the times it's just like, okay, do this, bounce to next goal. Where I don't really know, like, what do we know about Aoi as a character? That's my thing, is he's kind of just the go-getter shonen. I want to do it because I want to. Like, it's the classic assumption that is being made. A lot of shows are built upon assumptions, which is fine. But the more assumptions you build upon, honestly, the more generic you become, or also the less interesting you become. Is built upon the assumption that, of course, everyone wants to win. And so that is driving Aoi's goals the entire time. Is, of course, he would want to win. But I'm like, yeah, I would like to know more about that. I'm not just going to assume that. Show me it. Give me more details. Give me something that, I know there's the stuff with his mother, but as we mentioned, it's not, it's not that shown. Right.
Yeah, the mom like family dynamic and him wanting to help every now and then, like, comes and goes, but it's not necessarily like a permanent like huge part of the show.
Yeah, that's why I actually really like Hana. I think Hana grounds him and provides something to him that makes him a human character.
Which that was something I was in, like, kind of want to dive into, because within this type of stuff you were just talking, I would say maybe not as deep as it should be. We do get like a decent amount of him kind of wrecking his brain around why he's getting certain reactions from other team players, or why he's having these interesting dynamics with Hana, which I love as a character, by the way. She really is an anchor point for this show, I feel like. And almost kind of like not necessarily getting too deep on in terms of like a layer approach, but still having that type of search within himself and like kind of trying to understand what the heck is going on other people's minds around him and his team, you know?
Yeah, I think my biggest problem, I mean, this is just general problem with Shonen in general. It's just so self-serving, like one perspective based. Like he doesn't low key, Aoi doesn't see other people as real people. Low key. Like he actually doesn't see other people. Like he doesn't realize that they're responding and having like, I mean, he's learning, but like,
Which is, that's...
but it's very secondary to a lot of the things in the show in terms of like, he's so focused on his goals and achievement. Like it's so, like there's times where he cares about it, but I'm just so...
Like with the triangle with
Kureda and Asari. But like he's slowly getting there, but it's like a lot of the times, I think the way they explore the learning parts of the show is kind of just like...
So what I'm getting is it's like less of it not being there at all, but the pacing and how it's spread through the show.
Well, it's also just not very intricate. Like, okay, the way I would describe it, I hate to say it, it's a little sauceless. Like a little sauceless.
Okay.
Like it doesn't have the detail and the handling of the writing to like, I don't like, when I see Haikyuu, I see someone like as a writer who understands volleyball on a fundamental level, not only just as a game, but emotionally. When I see AoAshi, I see someone who understands soccer on a technical level, but does not know how to describe it emotionally very well. And I think that is something that's very lacking about the show, because as fun as it is to be sitting there jerking off, talking about technicalities, a thing I love is when you're able to describe it related to feelings and how people who don't care about the game can actually enjoy the game still without fully getting it. Like, AoAshi's not gotten that tentacle just yet in just season 1.
Well, yeah, that's like also, like, just for the audience, like, we gotta consider the fact that, like, this is season 1, and as much as we don't necessarily like saying, like, oh yeah, a next season is coming up, even Haikyuu, which we regard really highly in the genre, becomes better with like season 2 and 3. So like usually long sports animes like these tend to, if done properly, get substantially better going on.
Yeah. Like a lot of struggles and all these things, like, to be fair, I am judging a bit harshly based off season 1, like for sure, but I do think part of it is you can kind of tell the difference between sauce and not pretty quickly. Yeah. And I think like when I see Aoi as a character, I see someone who's relatively flat and not providing a ton to, like, I think the biggest thing for me when I see a protagonist is how much do they actually provide to their side characters that let them bring to life.
I'd say it kind of feels like it would be Haikyuu if they didn't introduced
describe them. Give me something.
Kageyama off the bat. Like it would be if it was only a Hinata.
Yeah, but the reason why Haikyuu is good is because it has both of them.
No, I know. That's literally what I'm saying. Like it's like it kind of feels like that. Like season 1 is too focused on only Aoi in a lot of moments.
I think my biggest thing is that I could be wrong, but I also am struggling to see the seeds getting planted for other characters. I know they're kind of there, but I also am not that interested in most of them because of how I think this is a problem of shonens more than sports anime. How inconsequential characters feel in shonens a lot of the time, where it's like, why do I care about the side character struggle? It's going to be fucking painted off in one episode, and then they're going to be inconsequential to the actual story, and the main character is going to do everything, which is kind of how AoAshi feels. It's like, there's Kuribayashi, who's like, the main really good player who's probably going to clash with, and he's going to eventually become a rival or something like that. But like, ultimately, my big thing is I'm just kind of like, I don't have a reason to like side characters, and in sports anime, that's like offensive to me because I really like, I love sports anime for side characters because I think it, like, sports attract so many different walks of life naturally, right?
Yeah.
So many different people can come to play a game. But when I feel like I'm only seeing it through one perspective, I feel like I'm being suffocated and I can't see the sport forever. Like the thing about like that Blue Lock is so good at, and I don't want to compare too much to Blue Lock, is Blue Lock shows you every different type of character, every different type of person, every single reason you could want to become a striker, right? And that's why I think the show is so cool, is because it's just like giving you all of this reading to be like, how do you develop your ego and willingness to become a better player and a better striker? Whereas with AoAshi, I'm only seeing soccer through one perspective and then expect it to expand, rather than why not shine a lot of different lights so I can see the different areas without having to, circle around and see everything that's.
That is, AoAshi is definitely focused on Aoi's perspective, which, again, these, like, it's not necessarily wrong, but if you, like yourself, preferred a character-driven, different, like, multiple perspectives type of storytelling, which we know you do, and I, to be honest, enjoy them pretty much as well, like Horimiya, we just talked about. It's always good addition and a nice way to enrich the storytelling of it. Though I kind of also feel like, since I think I mentioned this beforehand, I did read the manga quite a bit back in the day, and it's also like a little bit interesting where they decide to cut season 1, as in like,
yeah, it's really weird.
Like percentage wise, yes, they cut it around like 1/4 of the story, I guess. But they started giving us a little bit in terms of like showing other characters and like, oh yeah, like actually they exist and they do hold some importance. And yes, we're finally getting into their relationship with each other, then not necessarily always their relationship with Aoi, for example, with Togashi, and there's so many characters in all of these animes that we watch that it's really hard to keep a track of.
Are you talking about Koto Asari, or
so Togashi being the biker boy,
yeah,
and then the red-haired,
I can't remember his name,
right?
Yeah, but the defender,
Takeshima.
Yeah,
I remember they're both T's, but
yeah.
So Togashi and Takeshima, for example, the dynamic between the two that doesn't necessarily is involved with Aoi, other than him being their teammate. And it's just when we kind of start to see stuff like that, which we will see going further down the line, because we do on the manga, they kind of cut it. And they kind of do like a speed run. Well, not a speed run, but they kind of rush to the final match.
Yeah.
And then cut it. And it's like, okay, like it's, you've kind of given us a hint of like, yeah, Aoi is not the only person, but you finished the season like that, and we've been sitting on it for so long.
Yeah, to be fair, I think I talk about how good a lot of these sports anime are. Not all of them. Like, for example, Yuri on Ice is one season, Ping Pong's one season. But like a lot of times when I talk about Chihaya Furu and like Haikyuu, I'm like, these are shows that get really good by season 2.
Yeah.
I will say that the reason the when the show becomes good, or at least a lot better for AoAshi, is when Aoi gets put into being a fullback. Then I was like, that's when I was like, okay, I'm interested. Because if we're talking about how I prefer a show that prefers to, especially with sports, to shine spotlights from different areas, at least with this, they force Aoi to have to look from a completely different perspective.
Yeah. And to give a heads up, by the way, because I feel like we missed this part.
Yeah.
Aoi is aspiring to be because of Blue Lock, everyone would know the position as a striker, but in soccer we call it forward. Yeah. He wants to be a forward player, but he's forced to be a fullback. So yeah.
I think I hate to do this, but this is also because this is the sports or game I actually have the most knowledge on, as of talking about soccer like it's League of Legends. So okay. Telling someone switching from a forward to being like a fullback is the equivalent of telling like someone who's like a laner to be a jungler. It just fundamentally fucks with their brain. Like they don't understand themselves. Like if someone quit soccer because of that, I'd be like, yeah, very good reason. If like you didn't have a future as a forward, yeah. And I think something that's really important about watching something like AoAshi that actually does really well is getting into the details of how a goal is made and how it's scored.
Yeah.
People who are casual fans, I learned this more because I went to a League of Legends event in person once, and I met some truly casual fans who like never like understood the game competitively, had no idea who any of the teams were. It's like, first of all, I was blown away. I was like, how do you go to a sports event but not okay, whatever. That was me like being disconnected from humanity for a second. But like I was like, okay, these are fans who don't understand anything. They see a solo kill in League, they're like, oh my god, yeah. But like when I'm watching League of Legends as someone who's like, to give you an idea, guys, I spend a lot of time staying up late at night watching Korean League of Legends and analyzing it and talking about it, and I watch a lot of podcasts about it. Or I less so nowadays because I'm busier, but I used to care about it a lot, and I still do care about it a lot. When I see a solo kill, I'm like, oh, that's weird. That's like an anomaly. It's cool. It's sick. But as like an analyst, when you like are looking at like large sections of games, you don't rely on a solo kill to make a goal, right? Whereas it's like one thing I don't like about Blue Lock is it's kind of like, not always, it develops less against it later, but it's like kind of like making the crazy plays how you score goals. And I'm like, that's not how it really works. You set up good fundamentals for higher percentage plays, and you understand, like in League of Legends, it's like you set up good macro, you set up good wave states, so that the next play you make, and maybe it's got some individual skill involved, like you're going to have to outplay someone a little bit eventually, but you set it up to be such a high percentage play, and even that when you win, the rewards are so high that it's like insane. You don't just get a solo kill and you don't go down the soccer field and you take everyone on one-on-one and then you get past them. That's not how you play soccer. You play soccer by setting up for high percentage plays that eventually might require an outplay or heavily need an outplay or like something like that then scores you a goal. And it's like crazy to me that way. It's like, yeah, that should just be expected as sports anime. And I think that's something that AoAshi does really well. Is it like, yes, it does understand that like Aoi as a player he is treated a bit like, I think it's more so how people see him as God's gift to Earth. Like they treat him as both trash and God's gift to Earth. But they go like, yeah, Aoi, you've been playing soccer wrong. You are not that good where you can just go down the field and beat everyone. Like that's how you might be playing in your old prefecture. But like when you play versus real players who are actually good at the game and training, you won't get past one of them doing that.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things that I like about Fukuda, the coach that kind of like recruits Aoi into the team, where he's like, stop trying to move all the pieces so that you end up scoring. Like this is not just your game. You're one of 11 on the field.
Blue Lock would say otherwise, but
exactly. Blue Lock would say you're all strikers, go for it. And he starts saying this way before he becomes a fullback. Like he says this even when he's still playing as a forward. And that actually kind of summarizes what you just explained in a really direct manner. And Aoi, obviously clueless to that fact, gets kind of shocked by that information.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Fukuda as a character. I mean, you can clearly tell that this show has a care for the technical game of soccer. Like I said, I do think it struggles to translate that emotionally to someone who may not get to it completely, but I do really enjoy how it's like, yes, you need to understand what is like, because what Fukuda is doing, he's like designing the perfect team in his head, and like always like this revelation to him. But he's like, in order to make that revelation occur, I need to teach him what he's doing wrong on a fundamental basis and like theoretically. Like I always tell people, like I teach a ton of people how to play League. I don't do it as much anymore because I want to keep my lifespan long. But one thing I'd like tell people is like you are not playing you should not be playing this game like Team Deathmatch. That's not the goal. The goal is not to always kill the enemy champion, is to kill the Nexus. And the best play, like I've told people this like a lot of times when like I watch competitive League, I was like, oh, that was a bad kill for them to get. I'm like, why? Why would you not want to kill the other? Well, I'm like, no, it's nice if you can do it, but like you spend all your resources to go do this. It's like the equivalent of like we stole the ball and it's like deep in our own territory and we're trapped in a corner now, basically. It's like, yeah. That's not what you want to be doing. That's not how you set up a good game plan. You might have done a quote unquote good thing. It might be a statistic that looks good, but it's a bad or not, at least not how you should be playing the game fundamentally overall. That's what Aoi doesn't understand. Like Aoi doesn't fundamentally understand how the game of soccer is played, like at a professional or aspiring professional level even. And I think those revelations he has are good. I think again, it's the bit of the revelation is nice, but there's no learning building up to it. You know what I mean? It's like it's like waiting, revelation. You know, it doesn't feel like it's building up to it in the same way. I think that's my biggest problem to it. Whereas I see like when I watch Haikyuu and like I watch
everything is much more. I wouldn't even say like no building up, as in like there isn't like a learning phase of his, but every phase that he goes through is instantaneous. I'd say like the pacing through the whole process of him like realizing, learning, and then actually kind of owning that skill or executing it, like the in-betweens are so instant, like they're not connected smooth enough to feel like it's because it's there.
Yeah.
It's definitely there. And like if you like literally break down the whole show like scene by scene, you're like, yes, like we've spent this amount of screen time of him practicing and discussing with people, but it's just like sometimes the transition and then the telling of those moments are not as refined as it maybe should be, so it doesn't feel like it had that much impact on that.
I think part of it is because he's in his head the whole time. A lot of it is really so deeply told from his perspective.
Yeah.
I think
like within like an inside narrative.
Yeah, it doesn't really
thing,
build to like it doesn't have a self-awareness to it. I think that I mean, maybe it'll change later, but like something I really like to talk about with Haikyuu specifically is I argue Haikyuu, all of season 1 of Haikyuu, its sole purpose, which this is absolutely a egregious generalization, its sole purpose is to justify that the freak quick that Hinata and Kageyama originally do is wrong. That is the whole purpose of it. The whole point is for them to lose versus Seijo, and then spoiler for season 1 of Haikyuu, to lose versus Seijo, and then all of like the first half of season 2 is then rebuilding it and understanding that Hinata as a character actually has to be able to fight, because in modern volleyball you can't have a player who's just a tool. He needs to be someone, you know, even if it's not exactly what the team needs at that moment to win, he needs to do it eventually if they want to be champions and that type of thing. And I think when I watch AoAshi, I see, he's got this need to change and do something, but I don't see the build and struggle, because literally all of season 2 of Haikyuu in the first like 10 episodes is just Hinata learning how to become a player, like truly involved player on his team.
Which we'll get to see more in the upcoming season for Aoi, obviously, but for other side characters too, which I'm kind of more interested as well.
I mean, I like a lot of the side characters. I just don't get a lot.
Yeah, because with everything, all the dynamics, like we did get a little bit of Tachibana, we did get like a little bit of Asari and like
Fukuda. Not Fukuda.
No, not Fukuda. The
one sec.
Kaneda.
Yeah.
Kaneda, the smaller kid. Like we've got like glimpse to them and what they could be and how their personalities are like. Not enough though, which I'm excited for that part coming up. Especially my boy Togashi. I do like his approach to the team in general and how kind of like a really to the craft, like fully dedicated personality he is, which stands out. Like they all are kind of, but like he stands out. But also on top of all that, I do kind of want to do like a quick touch base for what did you think about the coaches and the outside of soccer kind of relationships Aoi had with characters like Hana, Fukuda, Date, all those.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of talked about Fukuda, and I don't really have more to say about Fukuda because I think he's given the classic mentor that's mysterious, but like low-key like god figure of like, oh, if he kept playing, he would have been the most amazing player, but he got injured, and so, oh well.
He like do tenfolds Lionel Messi.
Yeah, that type of thing. I will say, I do want to actually talk about Hana more because I think Hana, they so easily could have made Hana aggressive, tsundere, angry, I hate you, baka, stupid. But they really decided with Hana is like, no, Hana really cares about Aoi, whether she wants to admit why or not, but she does care about Aoi. And I think a lot of the way she shows affection of like, you know, there is the thing that kind of gets developed with her, but also is shown a lot of the times, not just in sports anime, but many things of like when your partner is not someone you like, you don't understand their language, you don't want to fight for them because like, you know, you get the jealousy with Henri. I do really like how she still is trying to find her way with also, again, it's kind of like, you know, she gets jealous, and I think it's a bit much how much she gets jealous, but her way of being able to find a way to support Aoi, which, you know, at first is a meal plan, right? And I think that's a really cute way of doing it, but also a very intentional way of doing it. And it slowly evolves to like, well, I think actually just being there at his games is important, right?
Yeah.
But that's a hard thing to want to do, like, to admit that like you kind of like someone and you want to spend time with them and support them, and I want to be at their game and support them for that reason. Like, she is like, as she says, like, his first fan, and I do think, I will say it's a bit weird that she sees Fukuda and Aoi, not because it's weird to see that, but also because Fukuda is her stepbrother of like, older than her, but also she loves him. That part gets weird. But I do really like Hana as a character because I think she again, I always talk about characters that ground other characters. My most classic example is Sasuke and Itachi. Sasuke is as a character, despite my cries of anguish, is not actually that interesting of a character. But when he's on the screen with Itachi, he grounds him and provides some weight to who he is. And I think that's the same with Aoi. It's like Aoi seeing Hana. It's not that it's like something to lose, but more so something that like reminds him of what he's doing it for.
Yeah.
Low-key kind of his mother, low-key of his also just like Hana reminds him the effort he's put in. It reminds primarily his effort, in my opinion, because it's like Aoi reminds him like I was there, like, or Hana reminds him like I was there for all of your training. I'm the one who's gotten you here, like literally. Like I did help you with the logistics of getting here. Yeah. I also help you with your diet. I help you with all of these things. Don't let all of this work go to waste.
I feel like within all the show, we see her reminding him the stakes, and then her reminding him what, like the whole process, like you were saying, that took him to be on that field within that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of, I like her too. Also within small things too, right? Like they're like kind of in an argument. And they're not necessarily talking, but she still like shows up to the match.
Yeah.
And like he kind of gets into this mindset of making it up to her by like performing good and doing well on the field and that type of stuff. As far as love interests in sports anime goes, I think I really do like Hana's character and the dynamic she has with Aoi. Overall,
yeah, I think I think that she's a good way to provide, it happens so often in like sports anime and also shonens, where it's like they get so deep in their training or some other thing where it's like you kind of forget their entire backstory type of thing, and I think Hana is the great reminder of that. Talking about Date as a coach, he kind of like Nozomi doesn't really do a ton. Like Nozomi doesn't really do a ton in the first little bit of the show. I'm sure he's going to do more, don't get me wrong, depending if whether, I don't know, his fate with the B team and all that kind of stuff, because I haven't read the manga. But
it was just interesting to me that when I first read the manga, obviously, that he was the planned villain by Fukuda. And like with time, we actually see he arguably even cares more for these players' like personal well-being.
Yeah, Fukuda is
in comparison to
Fukuda's a ruthless person, low-key. He's willing to end people's like soccer careers based off his intuition.
Goal,
his intuition and dream goal of like how I think they should be as players. Like, yeah, like telling someone to become a forward or telling someone to be going from a forward to a fullback is like legitimately messed up. Like, I don't think people understand how how honestly like isolating of a feeling that can be.
Like from an instrumentalist perspective, it would be like you playing a piano your whole life, and they would be like, yeah, well, now go do the guitar. And it's like
even more than guitar, because you're moving to such a defensive position, you probably wouldn't even stay in the strings section. You'd probably go to like something even further.
Yeah,
in my
probably.
Opinion.
But it's wild. That's why Date part was like relatively interesting to me.
No, it's definitely cool, but I don't think there's like a ton to it. That's my thing.
No, it's not necessarily a depth thing with the character. It's just like a nice showing of his true colors, I guess you could say. That we get the small salt bay touch of it.
I think my biggest thing with this show is a lot of these characters are super individualistic. Like they don't interact with each other's stories a lot, and their stories aren't that tied to the narrative just yet. So I kind of, while I may like them, you can't care about them. You know, you're
Yeah,
not
not
allowed
yet.
to care about them per se. I think that's the biggest thing, where it's like a character's not given screen time, they're not given a relationship to another character very strongly, and they're not tied to the narrative. And like, for example, like I care about Kobayashi a bit more because he's literally like more or less the manifestation of what Aoi wants to be. But I don't care about him that much because he has such little screen time. Like, there's just not enough factors
does,
for like
yeah.
most characters for me to care about them. You know, like Fukuda, you care about him even though he doesn't get a ton of screen time because he's super important to the story, and because he's got a strong relationship with Aoi and obviously all the players.
We got a pretty decent amount of backstory of his. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest problem for me as of now with AoAshi is that I just don't have a reason. Like, again, like the thing with Haikyuu that pulled me was I was given emotional reasons to care consistently. Whereas here I'm like, it has all the aspects in filling out parts that, you know, albeit maybe a bit too shonen, parts of it for me to actually like this show, but it's not giving me the reason to truly love it. You know, I'm kind of just like, I enjoy it. Like, don't get me wrong, I got through the show quick. Like, I got through the show in like maybe 2 weeks, maybe less. I really like enjoyed watching it, but when I kind of look at what substance there is, I'm kind of like, well, it was good, but I don't know if I can recommend it in the same way because I think that this needs a lot more time, and I don't know if in that time it's actually going to do what I hope it does, because hope is great and all that, but I do need to see it.
Yeah, of course. And literally that being a general indicator of a good sports anime getting a good season 2, we will actually reach to that answer pretty relatively soon
within the year.
This year. So
listen, my biggest gripe of this show is the fact that I did not get to see Esperion's 04 streak, because when you have struggle, why am I not? You literally told me they had struggle. Like that's when I get worried, right? Because I see a lack of sauce there, and when I see a lack of sauce, I'm like, oh,
that would be my biggest and only one of the very few gripes too. It's like everything else, it's okay. Like considerably done okay or better, but the lack of we not seeing that downfall, because we also hear that Esperion B team was always in like the top 2, top 1 of their league for the entirety of the team's existence. And now they're 0-4. That's a huge blow. So that should have been shown to the audience. But unfortunately, that didn't happen.
No, yeah, that's my thing. Is like when I talk about like sauce, I primarily just mean like, you know, the skill of a writer to be able to write things that are like diverse and all that kind of stuff, or like, you know, have the holistic way of approaching their writing. When I see something like that, I'm like, you had the opportunity to do it. You actually chose not to do it because you are using this as a plot point, not as a point of writing a good story. I always dislike when an author never sees when they don't see their writing as opportunities, they just see it as plot points there. And I see instances of this show of being like, I'm only interested in certain things, but not in all of my story. And so I'm just going to go to the plot points that make sense, or at least the plot points that people are generally going to be interested in. Because I can complain as much as I want to about it being too shonen or the side characters not being good enough. But that's usually not what has stopped me from watching a show in the past. It's primarily been because of shows that go over. I think the two biggest things for me is we talked about the animation. The animation is probably one, because when I'm watching sports anime, I want to indulge myself and watch good animation. But the other thing is I think it doesn't show enough in those details that really makes me go, oh yes, this is it, right? Like I think the show made a turn when Aoi became a fullback. And that
was a big blow.
And I'm going up on the up and up, but I think I'm still, it doesn't have my trust fully, you know, because I think it made enough mistakes in general, or like not enough. Again, it's less mistakes and not enough detail in general. And I think you could argue that the moments that are just quick revelations are mistakes, but ultimately I think the lack of details is really what's driving me to be like, I don't know how I feel.
So putting you in more like
like again,
50,
I didn't
50,
dislike it. I can watch it, but like if you would have sit me back and asked me to recommend it, I'd be like, I don't know, because primarily for me, it's like
I feel like you'd be like, I'll know after season 2.
Yeah, I'll know more for sure after season 2. But it's also like when I watch sports anime, I just like watching sports anime. So I've watched like 3 seasons of Free to get like honestly like I knew Free wasn't good the entire time, but I'm the same. I enjoyed watching it, but like. when you ask me for like recommendations of sports anime and like especially who I am as a person, like you're asking for me to give you like some real important recommendations
That
for
is
you.
true, yeah.
Because I'm like, I really want to develop like I'm always telling people like people got to get on Chihaya. I know it's like 75 episodes and I know it's never finishing and I know that sucks, but you should still watch it. So
Yeah. But with going through all that conversation, kind of reaching to the verdict of, as a really common example of sports animes, regardless of their quality, showing it with their continuing seasons, we'll see where AoAshi with their new studio reaches or falls short, whether it reaches or falls short of our hopes within this year, which probably will come up at some point. But that's basically our take on the show.
yeah, it's to be fair, I was harsh on this show because I don't. It's primarily because Aoi is the main character, is like the antithesis of me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
This show's fun. If you like sports anime, it's definitely fun. What I think the biggest thing is that when you dig, you don't get as much as like Haikyuu, Chihaya like ping pong. You don't when you dig, you don't get as rewarded as much. So you're kind of just expected to watch, and that's fine. I think there's moments where shows like that are okay. I'm just someone who, if given the chance, when I spend time on something, I like to dig no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. Like certain things are undoubtedly more dependent on personal tastes anyway. So it would make sense that we each have different stuff that we like. But with that, I guess, we'll see where it goes. Mm-hmm. And I guess so far so good as
it's fun.
Yeah, it's what we could say. I
didn't touch on the soundtrack. That's one thing. Masamune Yokoyama does the soundtrack as well. I think it's a little bit worse than his work in Horimiya and other stuff, just because I think that he's not the best at hype action sports anime type stuff.
Yeah, I still do like certain like moments, but yeah, I feel like
when he's competing
Horimiya's did like a tad bit better job.
When he's competing with other people in the sports anime genre, unless you're hitting on all cylinders, if it's like just okay, you can't really hit just okay in sports anime. Like it's really got to complement the scene, and I think he's fine, and I think he's probably better than fine, but I just think it's not.
He's living with the scene, like on the screen, but it's not necessarily elevating it to the next point where you get in shows like Haikyuu, or my example would be Hajime no Ippo, yada yada.
Yeah, to be fair, when the animation is worse and you don't have something to sync with in like some cool way, your music will actually shine a lot less because you don't have this way of like building to the crescendo and you won't feel that impact. Even though we want to pretend that we isolate music and animation, because it's anime, it's going to be combined.
You have nothing to match the dynamics of the music in terms of visuals, but I guess that was the last bit of part we remembered to talk about. So
yeah.
Now, with all that said, we're at the end of another episode. This is our episode 14, where we talked about AoAshi. If you like it, or if you want to wait for season 2, whatever you want to do that. But we'll see you all on our next episode with
Millennium Actress.
Bye.